back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. It's a horse thing. If you're new here, hi, I'm Kara. Today we are doing rating your repaints part 6, I think it is, which is insane, you guys. Thank you guys so much, everyone who submitted their repaint to me. Again, as always, guys, this is rating your repaint. This is a score out of 10, so please keep that in mind. These are meant as tips to help you improve. So like I said, please keep in mind I am rating these with a score out of 10. One thing I did want to note is I actually changed the 10th thing. So instead of it being chestnuts, because I just don't want there to be confusion over whether there is chestnuts or not, and it's hard because if I can't see it in the angle of the photo, then some people will say they have it. I didn't want it to be an issue anymore, so I ended up just changing the last thing. So instead of it being about chestnuts now, it is going to be about the neatness of your custom. So that includes how opaque your markings are, whether your pastels are grainy, whether your horse is lumpy, anything like that. Because that is much easier to see in a photo than a small detail like chestnuts. Now with that in mind, let's go ahead and get into the video. So first up we have Buck and Artsy, and they use the Breyer Warm Blood Stallion and only used acrylics. This is a beautiful horse considering it is only acrylics. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes, as always. Your eyes are very, very nice. I love that they have the outer ring of black, and I also can see some color in there, which is beautiful. And then of course the white of the eye. Great job there. With the hooves, I do see some striping here, which is very nice as well. One thing I would point out though is to try and blend it in a little bit more. You can either do that with water, or while both of your paints are wet, you can kind of mix them together just to try and make it not so harsh. However, I am going to give you a point there. Shading is nice too from what I can tell, assuming that this was done with acrylics, and it's not just because there is a beautiful sunset in the background. This is a gorgeous photo, by the way. You do have the nice black through here. However, I would recommend a little bit more along the back because I don't see it back there. I see a little bit through here, and I do see some shading here. However, most references, most of the shading you'll see will go through the middle of the stomach instead of around. And also a little bit more on the shoulder. I would give the shoulder a pretty basic layer of shading and then go in with these lines here and also add some more shading in through that. And of course, the pinking of the muzzle is so cute. So I will give you a half point there just because I think a little bit more shading on top here would have really put it over the top. Markings, well, there is actually markings on this horse, which looks very, very nice. My marker is huge. I apologize. I just completely blocked it out. But it does have the herring down here, as you can see, and it's not just a straight line. We love detailed markings here. Same thing through here, also not a straight line as it goes all up across the face. You can see some of the herring details, which is very pretty. And it is opaque, so I'm going to give it that. The mane and tail. So I can't tell if this is the texture. It looks almost like this was lighter gray paint going along in here in these details, or it could just be the texture of the tail. I'm not too sure, but I am still going to give you a point because this is a lot lighter, and then it gets down into some darker colors, although again, that could also just be the sunset. And then we do get down to what looks like almost a lighter grayish brown at the bottom, which is very pretty. And then of course, this looks good as well. I do not know what just happened to my marker. There we go. The coat color is very nice. However, I am going to give a half point because I think that the dapples could be, assuming this is supposed to be a dapple gray, are just a little bit on the messier side. Now, I will say, sorry, that's Cody, guys. I will say it does look very nice. However, I would try and blend it in a little bit more. So this is kind of where pastels come into play. If you just wanted to get one set of pan pastel, like a black color would be very nice. But if you are able to have these colors fade in with the shading of the coat color, and also make sure you follow a pattern, like a reference photo, and making sure that it's not quite all over the place when you're putting on your dapples. Or even, you can also have watered down acrylic, which will help this look not so opaque. That way it looks a little bit more blended in. Dapple grays are just very hard customs to do. I'm trying to do one myself right now. Realism, I am going to give it a half point here. I'm being a little bit more stricter with my points this time because as you guys are going through these videos and improving your repaints, the grade scale needs to go up a little bit more as well. So I am giving a half point there just because the dapples are not quite in the pattern that a normal dapple gray would be, and they are a little bit on too opaque, too bold. So I would just try and make them a little bit more transparent or a little bit less few following that reference photo. Like for instance, I'll pop up a dapple gray on the left side over here. You would try and follow it almost like in a honeycomb hexagon type of shape and follow it like that. But I do like that you have dapples of all different sizes. You have the bigger dapples, and then you have the smaller dapples, and that part is great. And then neatness, I am going to give a full point. Again, I just highly recommend following your reference photo. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is an 8.5. Again, beautiful horse. I would just be checking that reference photo, making sure that those dapples are in the correct pattern, but they're not too uniform, as well as just making sure that you have a little bit of shading going over the dapples. Also, what could help as just a last minute tip, as you go into the darker parts of the horse, you could mix the paint to be a little bit darker so the dapples look like they're fading into the color a little bit more. That way you're not keeping such a uniform color throughout the whole body. But thank you again, beautiful custom. Next up we have Bayo Thomas, and their model is the Schleich Stella Francis, I don't even know how to pronounce that, Schleich SF Stallion, that's what we're gonna do here. And they used acrylics and pastel, so always creativity and effort are a yes right off the bat. Your eyes, oh my goodness, look at it, it's so cute. It has the white underneath, which is very, very pretty. And then of course the black in the middle. Looks like dark brown eyes because I can see a little bit of the dark brown there. I could be wrong, but that is what I see. Then your hooves, as you can see, we do have some darker colors along the top there and then some lighter colors underneath. And I love that there are 2 different color hooves. I love 2 different colored hooves on a horse. That became a huge thing. I did that with all my horses for a while. Very pretty. I love the different colors. Shading, I'm going to give you a half point for the same reason as the previous. The leg shading is very, very nice. However, I would have a little bit more shading up around this area. And then also, instead of shading being in through here, I would have it come down more into the midsection. And more shading through here, not so much here. However, the face shading does look very nice all up in there. Markings, this one's blurred out, so I can't judge that one here. But also not a straight line, very, very nice. I would recommend though just flicking your brush a little bit more like that to try and build that marking up a little bit and have the hairing be a little bit more sparse. This also looks pretty good up there, but same thing, I would just flick a little bit of white paint with a small detail brush, which honestly guys, you can just use a nail art brush and those work great as well. I've heard very good things about that. I think I've used a nail art brush. I'm actually looking to buy new detail brushes, and if I do, I will have to link them down below for you guys. Now I gotta delete some stuff here because I covered it all up and I can't see the mane and tail. So I can see some lighter colors mixed in there, and I don't believe that's the sunlight. And then of course it gets a little bit darker as we go through here with still some lighter gray in between, like down there. And then the tail is blurred out, so unfortunately I can't see that. So I am going to give you a half point just because I can't see the back tail through here. I can see the outline, but because it is blurry, I'm not able to see that. Actually, I've taken photos. I don't know if this is what you use, but I have an iPhone, and so when I use portrait mode, it's terrible. Sometimes they'll like cut off half the head or a back leg or something, and so I just end up having to go in and do it manually because it'll completely cut off things. Love the blurred background. You can also get like an editing app, like I'll use PixArt, Photomator, and then I also need to get Photoshop, but those kind of apps work really well too if you just wanted to blur the background and making sure your horse wasn't blurred as well. The coat color is very nice, so I am going to give you a check. I like how they fade in a little bit better as you come up through here. All the dapples, they look very, very nice. However, it does almost look like you have 2 different tones of gray in here, which can pose a little bit of a concern. So this part here looks like it might be more of a cooler toned gray, and then this through here is a little bit of a warmer toned gray. So just make sure that as you're using this kind of stuff on the body, that you make sure that all those colors are the same kind of gray. And if this paint, for instance, because this looks like shading, if this, for instance, is like your base coat, you can always take your base coat paint, like say you had a light gray paint, and you can take some of your pastel and just mix it into your paint and mix that up, and it'll make it the same color, so that when you do go to add your shading, there's no issues with cooler or warm toned grays. Realism, I am going to say yes. However, I am going to give you a half point on neatness because a lot of your pastel, especially through here, is quite grainy, which is something that I personally can still struggle with. So part of that it can actually be many things. One of them can be you didn't spray your horse with your matte spray, which recommend Rust-Oleum quite a bit for that, or Krylon, or Tesser's Dull Coat. And using that will help the texture of the paint not interfere with the pastels. It could be that you're not wearing gloves, which can also pose a huge problem. It could be if your brushes are dirty from either a different color or they haven't been cleaned in a while. That could also pose issues with the pastel being grainy when applied. If you're doing more of a swiping motion and not as much of a dabbing motion, that could also have issues with graininess. Just all these little things. I would just recommend wearing gloves if you are not, and I would also recommend just trying to dab out some of the pastel like on a paper towel, or you could also just go through and rinse your brushes. So I'll clean mine really good with a sponge and soap, and then I'll let them hang upside down and dry, and then I won't use those brushes for about 48 hours, so just keep that in mind. That way they're fully dry before I have to use them again. Other than that, thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is an 8.5 as well. I also did want to point out this. I know this is a flaw, so one thing you can do, it looks like acrylic. If you're able to catch that before you spray a horse, you can just go in with a wet paper towel and just slowly scrub that off. And that helps a lot as well. And you can just slowly take that off. Just make sure you're being careful, like not to have a fingernail scrape it or anything and mess up the paint job. Beautiful work. Thank you again. Next up, we have Horse Editor 1. They use the Schleich Pure Raza Stallion and acrylics. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes. Now on this side, it doesn't look like much was done with the eyes, so I can't give a point there. However, I would, assuming that like this is your eye, go in and I would do like a ring of black through here. Go ahead and paint the eye already white, but this part will all be black. I would leave a little bit in the front. You could use like a flesh tone in the front here and white back there. So you get this layer of black. Then you could go in with a green, a brown, anything like that, and just leave a small little line of black so you can see it, but it's not super crazy. And go ahead and put in your pupil. So it is always going to be parallel to the ground, therefore it's going to be kind of like that. It's kind of like an oval shape. It's a little strange, but something like that. And you could do that as your eye, and that would work great. And that would be black going on top with that blue. All right, the hooves. It does look like they are a solid color, so I'm going to give you a half point there. And for some reason, that was not the right marker. There we go. What I would do is you could do striping of the hooves, or if you don't want to, you could have, say that's your hoof. You could color it all that light gray, but then go in with a darker gray just on the bottom, or even a little bit of tan, and just make sure it blends in a little bit. But then as you get farther down, you could even make it a little bit darker, or of course you could add stripes. Just make sure you blend those in a little bit so they're not super harsh. You can also just use like a really watered down color and brush that over the hoof, and it will seep into like the cracks of the hoof, which works pretty well as well. I personally haven't done it, but I've heard people who do, and they've had good success in that. And I'm giving a full point on shading. This is really nice looking. I love that you have it all through here, and that this part specifically is very light, same through here and here. Even though part of this is shine, this part is nice and light, which is very nice. Same through back here. This is beautiful dark shading through here. Also same on the neck. I would try and leave this part a little bit lighter though, and this part be darker. Same with the face, leave this part a little bit more lighter, but the muzzle needs to be dark, and usually around through here, dark as well, and around the eye and tips of the ears. But I love the body shading through here. Markings, I see no markings, so I'm going to reduce your score down to a 9 instead of out of a 10. Your mane and tail, I'm going to give you a half point on as well, because this pretty much just looks like a solid color. So I would go through personally, and I would take in with just a little bit of a darker color through here. It would just kind of streak it in just a little bit. And you could, especially in The low lights, so like this higher up here, would obviously be lighter than like down here. And same with the tail. I either have the top of the tail be lighter or darker than the tip of the tail. That's sort of personal preference. So you could have this be almost white, but still, you know, have a little bit of that off-white so it just doesn't look funny. Or you could have this be a darker brown and have this fade down as you go, and you can have that streak down to blend in as you go. Your coat color, I'm giving you a check on that. Beautiful. Realism, I'm going to give you a half point as well, because really adding in those highlights and lowlights on the mane and tail would help as well as adding in certain details to the eyes and having the hooves be more than one color. Then I'm going to give a half point on neatness. So your pastel is pretty smooth and really not all that grainy. Oh, well, actually, it's not pastel because you didn't use pastels. I just had to look at your mediums list. Good job on that acrylic. Blending acrylics can be really difficult. So in that place, your paint is very smooth. However, you can see some paint being down on the actual model and not sticking to the mane. So I would just use a very fine little detail brush as you're going along the edge down here. All this part, you know, can be done with a bigger brush. But as you approach towards the body of the model, I would just have this be a very fine detail brush, making sure that nothing happens when you get it through there. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 6 out of 9. I love the blending that you did on this horse. It is beautiful. I would just add in those extra little details to help overall improve that realism a little bit. Thank you so much. Next up, we have just me and my horses. They used the Schleich Pinto Stallion, and they used acrylics and pastels. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes. Can I just point out the fact that this is an Appaloosa? Guys, you do not understand how hard. If you have never done an Appaloosa, I dare you to go try an Appaloosa and tell me it's not difficult, because man, those are some of the dapple grays and Appaloosas are like the hardest coat colors you can do, I swear. Even me, I still stay away from Appaloosas. I have a horse right now that I'm planning on making into an Appaloosa. Wish me luck, you guys. Anyway, this is beautiful because Appaloosas are so hard. Eyes. Love the detail in this. I can see the white and I can also see the blue right through here. And then of course the black for the pupil is beautiful. Again, just a little tip. Remember that the pupil of a horse is like an oval shape and it is parallel to the ground. It doesn't matter if the horse's head is like that. That is terrible. Oh my goodness. I'm an artist, guys, I swear. Even if your horse's head is facing down, working on this here, that works. The pupil is still going to be parallel to the ground like that. So check there. Hooves. Same thing. I would try and add in that striping like I said. So if this is your hoof, that's a terrible looking hoof. I apologize. Go in with a darker color and you could go in at the bottom, or you could stripe and just make sure that that striping is blended in. And just make sure that as you go down, it just gets a little bit darker as you keep going. To give you a half point on those. Shading, I'm also going to give you a half point, because even though it does look like some of the lighting, I can see that this part is clearly darker than like this part. And again, could be lighting. However, I would go in with your pastel and try and drastic the shading just a little bit more, especially up through here. And then you could do very light shading through the midsection. Make sure you add a bunch of shading to the shoulder. You could also go in with do general shading on the shoulder and then go in with another color and go through the lines on that shoulder with a darker color. Same thing here. Make sure that this part is a lot darker than this, which you seem to do very well. Does look like the muzzle is shaded as well. Again, make sure you just do a little bit of shading through here and up top here, and tip of the ears as well. And then you can see some shading as you go down on the legs, but you could always make this part around the joints just a little bit darker. Markings. So I'm going to give you a half point on this, because what I would do as an Appaloosa personally, so instead of using, I'm going to try and explain this best I can. Say this is my horse, okay? This is the end of my horse. And pretend it's like a dark brown. Some darker brown that looks kind of red. It's okay. It's all right. That's my horse, right? All right. I am so sorry for this visual. So as you can see, this is the end of your horse, okay? You got all the drastic shading through here and lighter through here. All right. I would take my white paint, and instead of just blocking out a whole section, I would go around and streak it like this and follow the coat pattern so it might come out just a little bit and then go back in and then go back out, but go back in. And I would just go around and do all that. But still, don't fill this in solid. Then I would still have it go around, map out my spots, and streak it around the spots. All right, and then you could fill all that in. Like that. That way you can still have your light color down here, but you can still have your darker color here, but then you can also have the darker color fading into the light color down here. That way you get the best of all three worlds. That personally is just how I would do my Appaloosa. You don't have to, especially if it's a black horse. Yeah, take the easy way out and draw in those black spots, you guys. Do not make more work for yourself if it's a black horse. Black horses are so easy. Unless, of course, it's like a fading black. Anyway, that's how I would do that. That is my recommendation. You don't have to follow it if you don't want to, but that is personally what I would do. That way you can still get all those little herring details along the edge there, and it's not so much of just a straight line. But again, applause to you for doing an Appaloosa. Guys, that is one of the most terrifying coat colors to me, are Appaloosas. I actually went to DJB's Appaloosa workshop virtually, so once I can figure out, you guys, how to take that workshop and make it into my own, I will try and get an Appaloosa tutorial out for you guys, because I know it is rough. It is rough. And I got a lot of tips from her, but everybody has their own art style. So once I can figure out mine and I get better at it, you guys will get a tutorial from me. But guys, if we can hit 10K, I got a special tutorial already that I've been thinking about doing. So once we get 10K, you guys, that tutorial will be rolling out. So hopefully we can get to 10K by the end of 2024. That would be amazing. Anyway, getting super sidetracked here. Even though this is a black mane and tail, you could still go in with a dark brown, considering your horse would be considered brown. You could go in with a dark brown and streak it. That way it's not just so flat with the black. Coat color, I'm going to give you a check because I've seen peacock Appaloosas that look like this. Well, it's not a peacock Appaloosa. Realism, I am going to give you a half point just again. I think having that streaking along the ends of the markings for the herring would help improve it a ton. You could even do the same with them out here. Streak these spots on. Instead of just putting it on as a circle, you can streak it. So that way even those spots look like they have herring to it. And then I'm going to give you a check on neatness because overall, I don't see any graininess. Your horse looks pretty smooth. Even your white markings, there's a little bit of brush stroke, so I would recommend. Personally, love Joe Sandra white acrylic. All right, it is your saving grace. Usually the first layer that I do is not watered down Joe Sandra. And then as I go, I slowly water it down more and more. So as you get to the final coat, it's nice and smooth. But in the beginning, you need that opacity. So just leave it as is, but as you go up, make sure you water that down so you don't have the brush strokes. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 7.5 out of 10. Beautiful job. Next up, we have Model Horse Crafts 2110. They use the Schleich 2013 Fjord Foal. Oh my goodness, this thing is adorable. And they used acrylics and pastels as well. So of course, creativity and effort are always a yes, and those look like half points. Let me fix that. Now your eyes, love the eyes, and then there's the oval, guys, that I have been mentioning. Having it parallel to the ground, which is slightly tilted, I would just have it a little bit more parallel, and maybe even have it take up a little bit more space, just so you don't see all that blue, because if you look at a horse picture, often you're not going to have all that blue in it. Here, I'll pop up a picture of that to the left over here. Hooves, also going to give you a half point. Oh, not a half point, sorry, a full point. However, again, if you have this hoof and those are your stripes, try and make sure you blend those in just a little bit. Just, again, so they're not quite as bold. And I do love that you applied striping to all the hoofs. Shading is beautiful. The only thing I can see, though, is instead of here, I would try and add it a little bit more in the midsection. Let me see if I can find a horse that shows that really well. I'll pop it up to the left. Again, just make sure you do have a reference photo. I am one of those people who try to disregard reference photos every time I do a custom. Please use one. I myself am trying to get a lot better about that. It just really helps with shading when you're trying to, if you're not using a reference photo. Best thing you can do to help yourself, honestly. I used to be that person. Let me remind you of Oreo, guys. Who used to put shading in through here, but usually like 95% of the time the shading is going to be here and not through here. Also, I will say this is a great place for pastels to get grainy. Oh, look at your markings. I love that you have the herring, except instead of it being quite as angled, I would try and have it angled a little bit more upward, because it does seem like through here you're following the line of the marking instead of following the hair growth chart. So I'll pop up my personal hair growth chart over here to the left. This is an online photo, however, I do actually have the book, and I will pop up a picture of the book as well on the left. And I would just use that for hair growth patterns. So like especially up here, instead of it going up, it would actually be going down this way. But again, full point. It's very, very pretty and opaque. So gotta give points for that. Just, I would recommend really finding a hair growth chart that you can use and following that. And with time, even though I've only recently started following that, I already don't have to look at that photo quite as much when I'm doing customs. Your mane and tail, I'm giving you a point. Full point. I love how you blended this through here and how you have this part all white because that's where the markings is. That is a beautiful attention to detail. Same with this, how the tail is white because of the marking. You could even have it streak a little bit more, so instead of it just blending, you could have streaks of hair instead. But this is beautiful, and you do have those low lights of gray mixed in with the white, which is so pretty. You could even add in maybe like a tiny bit of yellow or orange, and when I say tiny, I mean tiny bit, just to make it an off-white color instead of being super duper white. Your coat color, check of course. Realism, yes. And neatness, half point, simply because some of your pastels, especially through here and a little bit on the legs as well, is grainy. And I know it's part of it, guys, can just be the horse texture. That's one thing that I appreciate about Briars, are just that they don't have the hair texture, so it can be a lot easier for things to not be grainy, which is why it is super important you spray your model from your base coat to pasteling, so that way the texture doesn't interfere as much with your graininess. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 9.5 out of 10. Again, I would just work a little bit on that graininess and that hair growth chart, but other than that, this is beautiful. Awesome job. Next up, we have Meadow of Horses with the Schleich Peruvian Paso horse, full I should say, and they used acrylics and pastels. Right off the bat, I am loving how this looks. So creativity, yes, and effort, yes. Your eyes, I can see that you have some white through here and then a little bit of color on the bottom, and that pupil is beautiful. Your hooves, love the striping of the hooves. Again, maybe blend in a little bit more, but it could just be that the photo's blurry. However, it does look like you blended it in pretty well. So love that. And of course that this hoof is not the same color as the other three. Amazing on that. Shading, check. I love that you have this to be a lighter brown all in these areas, so pretty, and then you have it fade to a darker brown, and then even up through here is black, same through here, black, but this is a dark brown, but this is a light brown. I love this shading. This is a beautiful coat color, so I'm gonna go ahead and give a check on that while I'm talking about it. Coat color is gorgeous. And then I love your markings. Pretty sure this was a Sabino. I'm sorry, I'm terrible about classifying markings, but I love that the herring you did through here. I would just say the same thing as the previous person where I popped up a hair growth chart over there, so make sure you go back to that part in the video where through here, instead of your herring going up, it would be going side to side on the stomach. Same through here, so even here, instead of it going out as much, it should already be transitioning because it's on the leg downwards, because down the leg it pretty much all just flows down. Well, actually, the leg doesn't go out that way, but you get what I mean. And same with the neck. Instead of this herring going out, it would simply just go up and down, so this whole part would be straight through here. And I love the face marking and the pinking on the muzzle and the gray dots. Super cute. Just want to point that out. The mane and tail, a check. I love that you have this streaking through here. You could maybe even add in a little bit more just with the fine detail brush. But I love that this is white and this is dark and this is dark too. And same on the tail, guys. It looks like a little bunny rabbit. Look at the tail. Oh, it's so cute. I love it. Then we already established coat color, realism, yes, and neatness, yes. So thank you so much, Meadow of Horses. I am going to give you a 10 out of 10 as your overall score. Again, only thing I can really recommend here is just following that hair growth chart and maybe making sure that there are no brush strokes in your markings. So through here, it just looks a little bit like maybe the paint built up a little bit too much. It could just be that you did too many layers too quickly and didn't allow enough time to dry, or it could simply be your paint was not watered down enough. But overall, amazing job. Next up, we have Sella Equestrian XW2TX. I am so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Anyway, they use the Schleich quarter horse mare and acrylics and pastels as well. Creativity, yes. Effort, yes. I love this Leopard Appaloosa. Leopard Appaloosas are also super duper difficult. I have one in the works right now on a horse that I have a conga of. So if you guys know my channel, you already know what horse that is. So your eyes through here, I would add in a little bit more white there in the back, and then of course that ring of black before adding in your eye color, and then that pupil parallel to the ground. I'm still gonna give you a full point there. Your hooves, same thing. I would just try and make sure to watch out with a fine detail brush that you don't get up any of your hoof color on the markings, which can be pretty difficult. So just a fine detail brush helps a lot with that, and also just being super patient and making sure that that marking of the stripe blends in a little bit more to the hoof. But of course, this hoof color looks different from that hoof color. Shading, I'm going to give you a half point on, because even though it is a Leopard Appaloosa and it's white, you can have an off-white or slight gray just go up through here just to give it a little bit more dimension. If you are using pastel, which you are, you can use a gray, like light gray, like add in a ton of white to that gray. And you can go in on these shoulder pieces right here and just put in a little bit of pastel just to give it some extra pop to it. Same if there's a neckline through here, which sounds weird, but you get what I mean. Like an indentation for it, you can put in some pastel through here, and often there's like a little line through here, you can put some there as well. And even under the face through here and here, anything that will make it look like it has a little bit more dimension to it, you can do. So markings, debating on how to classify this, hold on. Okay, I'm gonna count the spots as markings, and I'm gonna give you a half point. The reason being, same thing as the previous two people. Guys, I've already been recording for an hour and only gotten through like 6 people, so I apologize. Whoever did that Appaloosa, all right. Same thing, I would recommend streaking the spots kind of like that, and then on the other side streaking as well, instead of just making it a dot. That way you can really get in all those little herring details on there. Even with the little dots, you could just have like 3 little hair details, just little streaks. Just again, make sure you're following that hair growth chart. They were in 2 people ago, I think. So back up the video towards then and look at that hair growth chart. Super duper useful. The mane and tail, I am going to give you a check. I would just say perhaps your paint was drying a little bit and you were dry brushing just a little bit too much. I've had that happen a lot because this does just look a little bit over dramatic. So I would just add in some colors and streak it instead of rubbing like that. Assuming that's how you did it, of course. It could very well not be. But I would try and streak it with a detail brush instead of rubbing it with a dry brush. But I love that they are 2 different colors. That's really, really nice. Your coat color, I am going to give you a check on that. Just same thing. I would try and add a little bit of shading in through here. But I mean, Leopard Appaloosas are like white, light gray horses. However you want to classify them. I just think of that one short, or I called it white horses, and people came for me on that. So I know the difference between a white horse. Realism, again, I'm going to give a half point just because I think there could be some more shading in through here, and the mane and tail could be more streaking. Same with this, a little bit more herring with the spots, and same with the neatness, because through your pastel here it is quite a bit grainy. So as I had told previous people, I would very much recommend wearing gloves. If you're not, they can be like the super duper cheap glove, just whatever helps the oils on your hands not get to the horse. Even if that means holding the horse with a towel wrapped around your hand, do it. Perhaps you might need to wash your pastel brushes, so you can either take it and like dab out a lot of the pastel onto a paper towel, or if you really want to get in there good, take like a sponge with some soap and rinse the brush that way, and then you can take it and like hang it upside down. That's what I did, so the bristles don't get all weird, and just make sure it has plenty of time to dry. So often I won't use that brush for about 48 hours after, just to make sure it is fully dry before I use it again. That way the wet water will, oh my goodness, wet water. That way the water won't interfere with any of the pastel. Or it could be that you didn't spray your horse. I recommend Rust-Oleum matte spray. You can take that and spray it before you move on to pastels. That way your base coat paint won't interfere with your pastels, because that can also have a lot of issues with texture. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is an 8 out of 10. Next up, we have Affinity Delilah. They use the Schleich Hanoverian gelding with acrylics, pastels, and clay. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes, as always. The eyes. I'm going to give you a half point on the eyes because it almost looks like they're solid black, but I'm pretty sure they're not. I can see a little bit of white through there, which is always nice. You could potentially make that just a little bit more prominent. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to give you a full point because as I keep looking at it, I can see more detail. You have the black here with the color, and it does look like there's a ring of black and then some white down there in the bottom. Your hooves are 2 colors. I would almost maybe water down this dark brown a little bit more and place it a little bit more down lower towards the bottom of the hoof. Make sure you blend that in real good. You could even do it while the other paint is still wet. Honestly, I'll do just this plain base coat with my hooves, and then I'll add on another as I'm trying to blend in colors, and that helps a lot. Shading is beautiful. Oh my goodness. It's so pretty. I love this shading through here. I love this shading through here, in here, up here. The leg shading, I can see it on the mark. I love doing that too. I'll just go ahead and say this. When I make a horse with leg markings, I try to leave part of it showing the leg shading because I get proud of that little detail. So I love that you did that there. That's a really nice touch. And then of course you could always make this muzzle go a little bit darker. Same with the eye shading and then tips the ears. But otherwise, that's beautiful. Markings. So I do see some of the herring. I might have even added a little bit more. However, it does same thing. I see that some of this through here is going out. On the leg with the hair growth chart, the herring should be going straight up. So this part really wouldn't have much herring. It would pretty much just be a straight line. But when you get to here, that part would be going straight up. Same with this. Instead of it being so much of a straight line, you would follow that hair growth chart all around, pretty much going straight. But still full point on that. It's nice and opaque, very pretty. The mane and tail, I am going to give you a check on because you do have this stripe of white in here, which is very nice. However, I would almost take like the same coat color as the body. The same body coat color. The same coat color that you used for the body. And I would take that and I would streak it in just a little bit like that for some highlight, since the mane is black, just to give it a little bit extra something in there. Coat color is beautiful. Realism, yes. And neatness, yes, because I'm not seeing much grainy pastel. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 10 out of 10. Amazing job on this. Keep going. Again, same thing. Just make sure you're following a hair growth chart and your reference photo. Overall, it's really beautiful. Next up, we got Douglas Dalziel. Douglas D with 6346. I don't even know how to say that. I am so sorry. And they use the Schleich Clydesdale Philly with acrylics and pastels. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes. The eyes are very, very nice. Again, you got that white and that beautiful black pupil with the blue in the back. Again, I would just try and make that pupil, again, a little bit more like an oval parallel to the ground. I don't even remember where I saw that. It might have been Facebook. So I started looking and observing horse eyes and realized that was a thing. But check there. Hooves. I'm going to give you a half point. However, I do love the fact that this is a gray hoof and this is a tan hoof. I love that. However, again, you could add some striping, or considering this photo is taken outside, you could take a dark brown and put it on the bottom of the hoof like it's mud and just make sure you blend that in real good with the lighter color. And that would also look beautiful. I love the shading on this horse. For some reason, guys, this coat color is amazing to me. I used to hate chestnuts, but now I painted a chestnut and I love my chestnut, so now I love chestnuts. But the shading up through here and the shading on the shoulder is perfect, especially through here. This is beautiful, guys. And even the leg shading as you come down is very nice. I love how you added it to be a little bit darker on the feathering part, but lighter on the actual leg. I love that little detail. And of course, the gray blackish on the muzzle. Beautiful. Markings, also giving you a check on those markings. I love how you did the herring on it. It's very pretty, especially that it's only on the front 2 legs. However, this face marking up here, I would try and have a little bit more hairing through here. Again, that hair growth chart is super useful. You know what? I'll try and timestamp it. That's what I'll do. I'll timestamp the hair growth chart for you guys. So when you click on the video and you like drag how far into the video you are, you'll see a little part that will have the hair growth chart on it. That's what I'll try and do. Make it easier for you guys to find. And the timestamp will be in the description of this video. But I would try and do that. Your mane and tail, check as well. I love that you have these different colors mixed in there, streaking a little bit more. I would add a little bit more into the mane, just some darker colors because you did get the light color down pretty well, but I would try and add some darker colors like you did up here, but all the way down. But I love how this tail looks. The coat color is beautiful. Realism, yes. And then neatness, yes as well. Everything looks smooth, not grainy, opaque, looks amazing. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 9.5 out of 10. Again, I would just try and make those hooves a little bit more detailed with either that mud color or some striping or something just to give it a little bit more extra dimension. Overall though, amazing work on this foal. Next up we have Bar XIX Studios. They use the Mojo Frisian gelding with acrylics and oil paints. Now oil paints, guys, that's something new. I need to mess around with oil paints. You guys are reminding me of a lot of things I need to do. Creativity, yes. Effort, yes. Now your eyes. I would try and get a smaller detail brush just to make sure that that is all not coming out onto the actual body of the horse and it's staying in the part for the eye. So you have a little bit of the white in front, that black outline, some color, and then the pupil of the horse. So I'll give you a half point there because I don't see any white. I don't really see much color. And I would try and keep the eye a little bit smaller. Your hooves, also going to give you a half point. They are a solid black, so I would try and go in maybe with some tan color at the bottom and just blend that in a little bit just to try and give it, you know, like a feeling of the horse has been out in the woods or something. You could just add in a little bit of light brown and blend that in a little bit. Shading, I'm also going to give you a half point because I know it's the oil paints. The oil paints are confusing me just a little bit. But it looks like you added some shading in through here and maybe some right here. But I can't tell if this is just the lighting, so I'm not sure. So I'm just going to say I do really recommend Pan Pastels, which are amazing. You can get them off Amazon, but you can also get them off plenty of other websites. Or you can just get your normal chalk pastels, and you can just grind that up and use it. However, if oil paints are your thing and you got a different art style, use the oil paints. I know Creative Kristen Taylor is an amazing model horse customizer, and she has a video all about using oil paints and how she did that and applied shading to it. So you can watch that video. Again, Creative Kristen Taylor is an amazing model horse artist. If you're really into the oil paints instead of pastels, I recommend going and watching her video, and that will help a lot as well. Markings, I'm going to give you a full point on that one. I really love how this is done. I love the pinking of the muzzle and how you did the white face marking, how you've got a little bit of herring coming down over the sides. That's really cute. The mane and tail, though, does look like they are just a solid black, except for this part up here. So I'm going to give you a full point on that. However, I would try and streak it a little bit more through here, and you could even add in some darker brown and try and streak it in with that, just with your regular acrylic, to try and give it a little bit more dimension than it just being a solid black color. One thing that I've learned, you guys, about black horses, when I paint them, if you don't want it to just be a normal black horse, you can start off with a dark brown and shade it to black, but make sure it's still got, you know, some brown in it. I customized a horse like that, and people told me it was not a black horse. Yeah, it classifies as a black horse, just saying. Or, this new thing I've been doing, you can take like satin or glossy dark blue spray paint and use that instead of white primer, and then paint black on top of it, and it will be like kind of shiny blue underneath, which is really pretty for a black horse. So recommend that if you don't just want a normal black horse. Your coat color, though, is very pretty. I am going to give you a half point on realism, just because of the shading up here. Again, Creative Kristen Taylor, really recommend her being through here. And of course, adding in some of those highlights and lowlights to make sure it's not quite as flat. Same thing up here, and making sure that that eye is just a little bit smaller. I am going to give you a check on your neatness. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is an 8 out of 10. Beautiful work on them. Again, I love that you're using oil paints though. Like, that is really a nice thing to do. And I want to try and experiment a little bit with oil paints myself. So I love that you're using something different. Next up, we have the Equestrian Lily. They use the Schleich Tennessee Walker mare, I think it is. I could be wrong. I'm so sorry if it's not a mare. And then acrylics as well. So always creativity, yes. Effort, yes. Your eyes are very, very nice. I would also, though, just try and have maybe a little ring of black on the outside of that color. So if you put on the black first, then the color on top, and then the pupil. Remember, the pupil should be a little bit more like an oval. But I do see that white up front, giving you a full point on that. Eyes are really hard to do, you guys, especially the smaller you get. Whew, it's rough. Your hooves, again, look like a solid black, so I am going to give you a half point there. Same thing as the last person. You could just take in, like, a tannish dark brown, and, like, your horse was outside and got mud on its hoof. You could blend that in just a little bit, just to try and give it a little bit more extra detail to it. Now, I can't really rate shading here, so I'm going to completely cross that out and make this a 9 instead. Because, like I said, black horses, I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent here with my rating, so instead of giving a full point on shading, I'm just going to reduce it because black horses, it's hard to do shading. Markings, I'm going to give you a half point for two reasons being, one, the hair growth chart. So through here, actually this part is pretty good. This part gets a little funky. It's kind of like it's got that going on. Think of like an arrow. I'll just do it like that. But then as it comes back out, it goes back down. It's really weird. And then, but this keeps going around and down the horse. So it's weird. It's really hard to explain. But that part right here gets really hard. So I recommend a hair growth chart for that. And all this should be going roughly all that way if it's on the stomach. Same with this, instead of going straight out because it is on the leg, it would go straight down. And of course, don't be afraid to add in those herring details right here on the spots as well, just to give it a little bit extra detail. And then of course, make sure you are going over that white acrylic quite a bit, making sure you are thinning it down as you go, but making sure that everything becomes pretty opaque. The mane and tail, again, I'm gonna give you a half point. Well, no, it's a black horse. Never mind. Okay, I'm giving you a full point. Sorry. I don't know what I'm talking about here. It is very, very nice. You could, though, take in like a really dark gray and add in some highlights if you really wanted to. But again, it's a black horse, so it's gonna be a black mane and tail. So coat color, yes, it's a black horse. And I am gonna give you a half point on realism. Again, the only thing about it is the markings did affect the realism just a little bit because they do look just a little bit lumpy, like your paint wasn't watered down quite enough, so just make sure you get that a little bit more watered down as you go. For me personally, I always start out with my paint being a little bit on the thicker side, but as I go up in layers, I'll water it down as I go, and of course following that hair growth chart. Neatness, again, half point on neatness as well, simply because the opacity on the markings is not completely full, but it's pretty close. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 7 out of 9. This is really a beautiful horse. Again, just black horses, y'all. Pretty easy to do if you just want to practice like markings on a horse. Black horses are the way to go because if you mess up, you can just paint black back over it. So I actually am doing that with a horse right now. I have a black horse, so if I mess up, I can just put black back over it. But overall, just keep practicing that hair growth chart, and you'll get it down very nice. So next up, we have Tay Wild Horse Islands. They use the Briar Roan something. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. And acrylics and paint pens. Now, paint pens is something new. I can't say I have seen anybody submit anything with paint pens, but that's neat. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes. And I mean, like, whatever works, guys. I can't stress this enough. You can always follow people's tutorials, but you're also going to have to develop a style of horse yourself. As you paint, you're going to develop your own tips, your own things that work well for you. Yes, you can always learn from other people, but it's just naturally you're gonna learn things that you like how to do better as you go. So Tay, for instance, wanted to use paint pens, and that's completely different, but if that's what worked, and clearly looking at this horse, it's gorgeous and it did, then do that. You're always gonna learn something new, and I personally always try to stress as well. Every time you create a horse custom, you want to be trying to do something better than you did last time. So this horse that I'm working on right now, its name is Jupiter. It's a jumper, and it has a chestnut horse with dapples, and it's a really cool Sabino Overo looking horse. It's very, very pretty. My goal on this horse has been to do has been to do dapples like I've never done before, and to really take my time and learn the hair growth chart on this horse. And I have already seen such huge improvement just from really focusing on those two aspects to try and do better. Every time you create a horse, try and make a goal. What is one thing I can focus on to do better? And as you focus on that one thing, when you get to it, you will slowly reach that point where you've gotten super good at it, and then you can change to have another mindset, another goal of something that you want to do better. And as you improve on these things, so will your customs. Sorry, that kind of went into a rant. Just a lot of things that you can do as you constantly try to improve. You always want to improve and learn something new each time you do a custom. And especially reflecting on a custom after you finish, what went well, what went not so well, and what can I do to do better is always amazing. That helped a lot too. And often, what did not go so well is my patience. So, working on that. The eyes are beautiful. Look at that white in the back and that black. However, I'm not seeing any color. I am still going to give you a full point, but I do recommend adding in just a little bit of color. And then, of course, that pupil being horizontal, like I have talked about in a lot of the previous customs. Hooves. Oh, man. Okay, we're going off of this one here because this is the only one I can see. I'm going to give you a full point on this. However, I would probably try and have this darker streak that you have up here fade in a little bit more. And I would be able to see it here. So if, say, this is your hoof, taking in like a tan color like it was out and it got some mud on its hoof, you can take that and kind of blend that in along the bottom just to give it a little bit more detail. Shading, also giving a half point. Reason being, as we have previously talked about, even though it is a leopard Appaloosa and it is, I'm doing air quotes with this, a pink horse, not a pink horse, oh my goodness. Even though it's a white horse, you know, they still have shading. So you could take a super, a really light gray pastel and go in through here and add in, take your white and add in a little bit of gray. And you can even take, I did this before on one of my customs, like a light gray color, and go in acrylic and go in on all these muscle details right here. And you can do that and give that a little bit more dimension too, like through here and stuff. And here and here, and all those little areas work great as well. That's just a little tip I picked up that sometimes I'll do and sometimes I won't. It just kind of depends. Marking, same thing. We did have a leopard Appaloosa submission, so I'm gonna classify the spots as markings. And I'm gonna give you a full point, but same thing as I had also mentioned, just making sure that those spots, I would say more like streaking. Think of it how you would do markings. If I'm classifying it as markings, let's think of it like markings. So if you were to take the dots and you do the hairing like that, because in a hair growth chart, all the markings on the stomach are going this way, in that direction pretty much. All along, it's going pretty much straight through the stomach. So I'm taking a black here. This is gonna be my spot. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna streak it across, and I'm gonna streak it across that way, and that's my spot. So it's not super uniform. They're not meant to be perfect circles, which you did an amazing job with. Just wanted to point that out. And you also wanted to point this out. I forget about this. The light gray ring around the black, you can see that through here and here and there and there. Pretty much on all of them. That is super time consuming. I just want to point out how absolutely amazing these spots are that you did, because man, those take forever. Like I said, been working on my own Appaloosa. I understand the struggle. Leopard Appaloosa, by the way. I would just almost treat it more like markings, so that way instead of it just being a solid dot, you know, you're still getting the hair because they are spots. But you did very well, I personally think, with placement. Even assuming you did follow a reference photo, most of the spots sometimes back here will get a little bit larger than the spots out here, unless, of course, that was your reference photo. It's different for every horse, so I can't classify that there. Your mane and tail, check as always. I love that you added all this in and it's nice and streaky, that you have the dark colors, but it also fades out to a light gray, and same thing up here, very nice. Even this is becoming a little bit brown on the ends, which is beautiful. Coat color, amazing. Realism, yeah. This pink muzzle is so cute. And then the neatness, of course, yes. So thank you so much, Tay, for your submission. Your overall score is a 9 out of 10. It is really, really nice. I just want to point out, even though it's not a perfect 10, this is still a gorgeous horse. And the things you were deducted for has nothing to do with the Appaloosa coat color itself, because that part was amazing. Great job. Next up, we have Twilight Stables 2012. They use the Schleich Tennessee Walker Mare. I'm trying to abbreviate here, you guys, trying really hard. And they used acrylics and oil pastels. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes. The eyes. So it does look like it's pretty much just a solid black. So I would try and go back here and add in a little bit of white. And then, you know, a ring of black around. And then add in your color eye over the black just to leave a thin line, and then add in the pupil as an oval, remember, parallel to the ground. So I'll give you a half point there. Your hooves, it looks like it's pretty much a solid color, so if that is your hoof and this is all a light tan, again, same thing, you can act like your horse came in the mud, take a dark brown and just apply that on the bottom and then blend that in with the lighter color up above. Shading, I'm gonna give you a half point on shading. I would try and blend this black out just a little bit more. So you said you used oil pastel, but even with acrylics, while that base coat color is still drying, I should say, you can fade in that black quite a bit. Just be very careful with how you do it. So instead of flicking the black up into the base coat, I would probably flick the base coat into the black, so you know it's not getting everywhere, because black is such a powerful color to use. Red and black, guys, need to be used sparingly. I'll say that, red and black. Red can become so overpowering so fast, and then it becomes really hard to cancel out. Green really helps cancel out red. Blue will help cancel out super orange, and purple will help cancel out really yellow things. Remember that white will fade out really fast, and then black also just overpowers a ton. And then even up through here, like I mentioned before, this part is not usually where you would see shading. You would more or less see it all through here, and same just a little bit more up here, although I know it's hard to tell with the sun shining down through that way. And again, more shading up through here rather than through here, but the muzzle shading is very nice, and of course add in a little bit around the eye and the tips of the ears. Markings, I will give you a full point on because they are opaque, and I do see herring. I would just try and clean up the herring just a little bit, because it does look like there's a few spots that are just not completely in with the rest of the marking, so I would just try and follow that. Otherwise, looks really nice. The mane and tail is just a solid black, so I think here you were going for a bay, because you got the legs fading to black and then the mane and tail are black. But even as a bay, which bays are very beautiful horses, you can take a dark brown and streak it in through the mane and tail. Again, with those highlights and lowlights, just making sure that you are able to add in a little bit to give it some more dimension, and so the black doesn't make it quite as flat. Coat color, I'm also giving a half point. The reason being, if it is a bay, it came out as a very red bay, so there's a chance it is a blood bay. But even with a blood bay, it is often, the red is more seen in areas like this, and then it fades out to a normal brown color, so you don't see a super orangey brown throughout the whole body. Again, really recommend following a reference photo. Reference photos are amazing, and you can go along and use that. So just because it is a little orange, I'm gonna give it a half point on realism, but a full point on neatness. I am giving you a full point on neatness, however, even though that this did get just a little bit grainy, and through here, I would just, again, making sure you're wearing gloves. Your brushes might need to be clean, so again, you can take a sponge with some soap and clean those brushes, or take your pastel brush and blot it onto a paper towel to try and get some of that out. If you do wash your brushes, I would not recommend using them until 48 hours afterwards. That way it has plenty of time to dry and the water will interfere with the pastel. Again, could be the glove situation. It could also be you didn't spray your model before you added pastel, so that can also have weird things going on with texture with the paint and the pastel. But thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 7 out of 10. Again, very nice horse. I would just try and maybe add in a little bit of green and purple into that coat color next time you mix it, just so it's not super duper orange and it is a little bit more brown. But overall though, great job. Next up, we have the 3 Scoots. They use the Schleich Arabian Mare. I have this horse, love her to death. And they also used acrylics. So creativity, yes. Effort, yes. The eyes, I am going to give you a full point. However, same thing as I have mentioned, I love that you have the white in the back, but I would have that ring of black, but then add in your coat color over it. And then of course the pupil would be horizontal, not horizontal, I keep saying horizontal, parallel to the ground. Parallel, guys, is like that. Pupil parallel to the ground, and just make sure you could see a little bit of eye color in there. Even on my brown eyes, I'll sometimes add in just little flecks of gold to give it that little extra detail. Your hooves, I'm giving you a full check on that. You could add in some other brown colors, however, I just really like that you added horseshoes to it because horseshoes are beautiful. So great job there. Shading, it is a black horse, so again, I'm going to reduce this down to a 9 just as I did the other person, simply because black horses are hard to shade, so I don't want to give any good or bad in that area. Your markings, again, really recommend following that hair growth chart that'll have been earlier in the video. Again, I'm gonna try and timestamp that for you guys, so the timestamp will be in the description below. But for instance, all of this, I mean, this is all going out as it should, and as you come down, yes, that is going to start going down. Through here, this would not be going out, it would be going up. So this pretty much would all be a straight line and there would be no herring. You got this right, this will all be going up. Again, probably more of a straight line through here. This would all go up and down, but this would be a straight line as you've got it. This is also going up. This would probably be a straight line. This going down is very good. Overall, that's a pretty good marking. And then this is also very well done. However, I'll be honest, not too sure how realistic of a marking that is. So I'm gonna give you a full point on markings, but a half on realism. Mostly for, I'm skipping around a little bit, that the markings are a little bit lumpy. You can see a little bit of the brush strokes in there, which just happens with watering down your paint here. Again, like I said, you can start off your base coat being pretty thick, but then as you go up, you definitely want to water that paint down more and more every time you add a new layer. That way you don't end up with any brush strokes or anything. And of course, just following that hair growth chart. But what I mean by not sure how realistic that would be is, from how I can see, it mostly looks like you just added a marking all through here. It didn't go underneath the stomach, and it didn't connect over the back or the rear to the other side. So, I mean, you never know. There are definitely horses that can do that. Overall, I probably would just see a horse that more or less the marking went over the back and connected on the other side somehow. Mane and tail, giving you a check. Of course, through here, you could probably have added in just a little bit of white because of where the marking is. If you had brought the marking up, maybe even just a little bit more, and then you could add in some white or streakiness into the hair. Just because, you know, where white markings touch, usually that part of the mane is an off-white or a white color. You could do the same here because the marking does start to touch where the tail begins, so you could have some white come down in there. Coat color, beautiful. We already discussed realism, about the marking just being a little lumpy and not following a hair growth chart quite as closely. And then neatness, again, half point, just same thing again about the markings. That's the only reason it is a half point. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is an 8 out of 9. Beautiful job. Again, just make sure you're following a reference photo and following that hair growth chart. Just making sure that those markings line up on both sides. Again, I can't see that other side, but making sure that that does line up. Although, great job on that. Especially love how opaque you were able to get this considering it's a black horse. Next up, we have PRS Studios Official. They have the Schleich Hanoverian mare with acrylics and pastels. So of course, creativity, yes. Effort, yes. Eyes are beautiful. This is a very, very nice representation of how I will usually do my eyes. However, again, that pupil would be parallel to the ground, so it probably would be going more like this instead of quite as downward, but it's very, very nice. Your hooves, love the striping on the hooves, although personally, I would probably try and blend it in a little bit more into the base color of the hooves. Love that the hooves are glossed, by the way. Shading, again, we're going to cross this out to a 9 because, again, black horses, you guys. We got a lot of black horse submissions this time, actually, which is crazy, but just crossing that down to a 9 because, you know, shading on a black horse can be pretty hard to do. Markings, already know, full point on that. I love how you blended it out. It just looks like very soft markings. I love that they're nice and smooth. It's not lumpy. You're following the hair growth chart really, really well from what I can tell, although through here, the markings would probably go more out instead of quite as up. be more out all through here. This one is done very nicely though. Same with this face. I really love how the herring is done on that face. That is really nice to look at. The mane and tail, full point on that. I really love how you added this brown color towards the end as you went, and that this whole section is off-white, and also how this is a solid black with the red mane bows. Very pretty. Coat color, check. Realism, yes. And neatness, of course. Nothing is grainy, and your markings are very nice and smooth. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 9 out of 9. Again, I do just recommend following that hair growth chart that I will have timestamped down in the description below. Again, that was something, guys, I struggled with for a really long time, and only in like my recent 2-3 customs have I really been following that hair growth chart, and that helps so much. So at that timestamp, I'll have the chart link down below and the book that has that chart in it too. So thank you so much. I love this horse. She was beautiful. And last but not least, we have It's Me Horsey. They use the Schleich Andalusian Mare and acrylics. So creativity, yes, and effort, yes. Eyes, I really like the eyes. However, I would probably add a little bit more white up here in the front, just so it doesn't look quite as a solid black. And then the hooves, I could only go off of this one, but it looks like it's pretty much just a solid color. So I would probably take a darker brown and just blend that in on the bottom just a little bit, just to give it the extra detail, like if it was out in the mud, or as you can tell on the beach here, or sand, it looks like the beach. Just to add a little bit extra stuff. Or of course the striping, but just make sure you blend in the striping. Shading, I'm giving a half point because I would probably have seen these areas and a little bit down here be a little bit of a lighter chestnut, and then as you come up here you would get more into a dark brown rather than that reddish chestnut color. However, you do have the gray around here, the muzzle, and I would probably add in a little bit of gray up here and on the tips of the ears as well. But really I would just try and add in some more shading along through here and the joints on the leg as well. Even when you have white, you could always take like a light brown or gray color depending on if you want your horse to be dirty or not. You can apply that here on white markings. Markings, I'm going to give you a full point on that, but same thing as I have mentioned would just be following the hair growth chart just a little bit, although it looks like pretty much for the most part you've got that hair growth down pretty well. Except through here might be a little bit different than what it would actually be, and this going up as well. This also looks pretty good, I should say. And this is all going straight across the stomach as it should be, and same with this marking down there. The mane and tail, check already. I mean, y'all, that looks like a straight up sunset. Come on, that is beautiful. If you did not name this horse Sunset, anyway. That would be a really nice name for this. That's probably what I would name this custom. Anyway, I love how you have the darker colors on top, and then it goes into more of a middle color, and then a really light color at the bottom. That is really nice. And you did the same up here, dark, middle, light, and you even have that white in the hair from a marking that I'm assuming is on the other side of the custom, which is really pretty. The coat color is beautiful. Again, I would just try and add a little bit more shading up through here. Realism, yes. I'm giving you a full point on neatness. However, just like the tiniest bit, it looks like your white markings might be a little clumpy. However, overall, it looks pretty good, but maybe you could water it down just a little bit more and it might not come out quite as clumpy, but I'm not deducting it to a half point because you can barely see that. It's just a tip that you could do. You always need to water your white paint down more than you think every single time. It's like, I paint marking, I'm like, oh, I probably should have watered that paint down more than I thought I did. So thank you so much for your submission. Your overall score is a 9 out of 10. Beautiful job, just again, following that hair growth chart, mostly through here and a little bit on this one as well, and then adding in that shading up on the back over here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you again to everyone who sent me your submission. I appreciate it so much. Of course, there will always be a part 7, but it is probably not going to be around more until Christmas time because I'll just be completely honest with you guys, the amount of time these videos take to make, I just spent almost 3 hours filming this, and then I know it's going to take at least double that to edit. So these videos are probably, the next one will be in the next 5 or 6 months. So until then, keep working on that stuff. The biggest thing I probably saw was just working on the shading in all the right places and following that hair growth chart, making sure your markings are watered down quite a bit when you're applying the paint. And graininess is always something that is a struggle. But overall, you guys did amazing, and thank you again for sending in your submissions. They were all beautiful, and I'll see you guys in the next video or the next live stream, whichever one comes first. As always, remember to be kind, be smart, and stay safe. Goodbye, everybody.